and we'll moderators. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, both at home and in our studio audience, and welcome to the HCAM 2019 Contested Races Candidates Debate. I'm HCAM News Director Tom Nappy, and I will be the moderator for tonight's debates. This evening, we will hear from candidates in the 5 contested races in this year's town election. Our panelists this evening include freelance reporter and HCAM board member Michelle Murdoch, and myself, Tom Nappy. Our format for these debates is simple. Michelle and I will alternate asking each candidate questions, and they will have up to 1 minute to respond. If you hear the bell, you have 10 seconds remaining. If a candidate has a follow-up response to another candidate's comment, they can state they would like to make an additional comment. I will cue them, and the candidate will have 30 seconds for the comment. A panelist may ask a follow-up question, and the candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond. Following the question and answers, each candidate will have up to 2 minutes for a closing statement. Our first contested races candidates debate features candidates for town moderator and commissioners of trust funds. We have our town moderator candidates, Thomas Garabedian and Ellen Rutter, and for commissioners of trust funds, Susan Curries and Gerald Tewitt. There are 2 candidates and 1 open 3-year seat for both positions. Before we start, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to participate this evening. And without further ado, I'll ask the first question. And the first question is for the candidates for town moderator. The question is, what inspired you to run for town moderator, and what experience and skills will you bring to the position if elected? We'll start off with Tom Garabedian.
Thank you, Tom and Michelle. Having participated in town meeting over roughly a 27-year period before I decided to run, I thought, I joked 3 years ago that I was going to make town meeting great again. In truth, town meeting has always been great. It's a wonderful exercise in pure democracy, and it's something that the citizens of Hopkinton cherish. I had been very involved in a variety of roles over the years in town government, from school committee to commissioner of trust funds to zoning board member. I thought I could do an effective job helping to moderate town meeting, and that was really my motivation, as a willingness to continue to serve the community and in an area where I felt I had the skill necessary to handle the job.
Terrific. And Ellen, same question.
Thanks, Tom. So I've been involved in a number of different things in the community. I'm active in my church board and a couple other things, and I've been really interested in how I could give back to the town in a bigger way. Now that my kids are older, I have a little bit more bandwidth, and I run meetings as my job. So when I looked around and thought about the types of things that I might be able to contribute and do, town moderator kind of seemed like a good fit. I had the opportunity to be the deputy last year, and so I saw how it worked, and I thought this is a great opportunity for me to use some of my skills and give back. And in February, when I moderated, I was a little nervous, but I found that I just brought my skills and my experience to bear on the meeting and felt that I could contribute a lot by being town moderator.
And our next question is for the candidates for commissioners of trust funds. Michelle will ask the next question, and Susan can answer first. Michelle?
Okay, so basically the first question is, what attracted you to want to run for this position, and why are you interested in being on the trust fund commission?
For me, this is a really important, it's a really important task. Several months ago, I was helping my parents with their trust funds and their estate planning. And what I learned is that it's really important to carry forth the torch. These people are entrusting us to carry forth the intent and the values of their legacy. I wanted to do that, but I also wanted to volunteer for the town in a capacity where I could fully use my personal and my professional skills. And this is exactly that type of position, so I'm excited to be running.
Perfect. And Gerald, same question.
Yeah, I've been a volunteer in different things all my life. I think I began up here in Boston when I took my job with the government, joining programs to mentor inner city youth in Roxbury. I worked in the mass prison system with inmates. Later on, I got on the boards of several civic and social groups, JCs, Toastmasters, and social service agency. Just volunteerism has been part of my life. When the kids came along, I volunteered in sports groups, joined the soccer board. The kids are grown now. I have time. I'm on the Board of Appeals, and I have more time. And this seemed like a great thing to do, help out with the trust. They just need somebody, an elected official, to oversee what's going on, enforce the rules, just make sure the money's being used as intended. We've got 5 trusts. The biggest one, I think, is about $2 million if you include the interest. You got a lot of people working together to make the town better. It just seemed like a fun thing to do.
Excellent. All right, our next question is for the town moderator candidates. Michelle will ask the next question, and Ellen can answer first.
Okay, it's a little bit related to some of the stuff you guys already talked to, but what we're really looking for is, in addition to the skills that you bring to the table, what do you feel is the most important skill for a town moderator to have, and why?
Even though the role is moderating, I would say the most important skill is listening, because I think it's really important to understand the questions that people are trying to raise and help facilitate a conversation that they're trying to bring forth. So there's some people who are really well prepared and have a buttoned up statement to make, and there are other people who come up and they're sort of trying to find their way to make their point. And I think the moderator can help everybody make sure that they're asking their questions, and also make sure that before we vote, people feel comfortable really understanding what they're voting on. So I think being a great listener is really important.
I would approach it a little bit differently. It certainly is important to be a good listener. I think what's most important is the moderator's preparation and understanding of the articles that are going to be in front of the town and understand the issues that are going to be presented. So that in explaining in helping to clarify for the benefit of the people who are participating in town meeting, you can help clarify the issues and help make sure that citizens are fully aware of what they're voting on, and in particular, what the vote will mean with respect to themselves and with respect to the community.
Okay?
All right, terrific. And Michelle, I believe you had a follow-up?
No, I'm good.
No good?
I'm good.
Our next question is for the Commissioner of Trust Funds candidates, and we'll have Gerald answer first. And the question is, what skill sets do you feel a Commissioner of Trust Funds should have?
Well, listening is certainly one of them. And I'll be the new guy on the block. You got Mariel Kramer there already, and Janine. So there's a lot of experience there. So I think I'll be doing a lot of listening and learning to begin. But you're working with a great group of people. The biggest fund is the library fund. You got almost $2 million there in a new library. I would hope that we could work closely with the leadership in the library. We got $600,000 of funds to invest, and the McGovern Fund is to make that a better resource for the people of the town. I'm a great believer in libraries, and I'd like to see us use that fund to make this a truly great resource for everyone, from the youngest to the oldest.
Okay. And Susan, same question.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What skill sets do you feel a Commissioner of Trust Funds should have?
I think first and foremost, the Commissioner of Trust Funds needs to be able to follow the terms of the trust. The trusts are very complicated legal instruments, and they're meant to preserve both the financial integrity of the trust as well as the wishes and desires of the person who so kindly gave them. I think collaboration with other town departments is important. For example, the Comey Fund is for the preservation of the Comey Chapel, and that connects with the cemetery commissioners. It would certainly connect with the DPW and so forth. And so there is that sort of board emphasis that would require collaboration skills. So really those two, the acumen to either know or ask questions and not make assumptions about what those trusts are supposed to be for, and the ability to work with other departments to ensure that the funds are used for the benefit of all Hopkinton residents to the full extent possible.
Okay. Michelle has the next question, and it's for our town moderator candidates. And Tom can answer first. Michelle?
Okay, I keep getting the questions that you guys have halfway answered on a previous one, so I'm going to switch it up just a little bit. The question was two-part, sort of, prior to your involvement, prior to any official involvement with town meeting, did you attend on a regular basis?
It's an easy answer, yes.
Yes, I have, I think, for the past 5 years.
Okay. The second part of the question was any other town government experience, which you both answered sort of in your open. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to switch it and ask if there are any issues that you have observed at town meeting more recently or in the past that you think need to be improved upon, or do you think things are working well?
Tom?
Well, I think town meeting has been working well. I hearken back to there are things in town government that can improve, and that have an impact on town meeting. And I'll give an example, and this is something that came up at our moderators meeting just yesterday, which is a meeting where we prepare for town meeting and go through all of the articles so that we're conversant with everything that will be discussed. We have had occasion in the past couple of years to bring forward articles that provide for funding for certain capital activities, and then find a year later that groups are coming back to town meeting for very significant additions to the budgets for those articles. I made a comment to town manager, and that's concerning. That's concerning because citizens, have the impression that, gee, the projects weren't fully described, and you kind of got us on the hook for a certain amount of money, and now you're asking for a lot more. I suggested to the town manager that there be better preparation so that when these articles come before us, the full scope of the projects are defined early on, and we don't surprise town meeting members in subsequent meetings with huge bills going forward.
Alan?
Well, I think in general, town meeting has been working pretty well. There are a couple things that I've observed in my capacity as deputy last year and acting in February. The first one is that sometimes we can get a little bit, it can get a little confusing what we're voting on. So are we voting on a motion? Are we voting on the article? Is it an amendment? So I think making sure that people are very clear about what's in front of us and what we're voting on in the moment is very important. That's one thing. And another thing is sort of a bigger conversation, which is that we have a lot of people who are interested in participating in the town in some way or another and find getting to town meeting difficult. So the question is, how do we create an environment where more people can be more engaged? We have trouble getting to the 1%, but there's way more than 1% of people who are really interested in what's going on in town. So that's not something that's a simple fix, but I think it's something that bears lots of discussion.
Okay. Our next question is for the Commissioner of Trust Funds candidates, and Susan can answer first. And the question is, what do you feel qualifies you for the position of Commissioners of Trust Funds?
I think the first thing is just my passion for the job and for carrying on the torch that these benefactors of the town have handed off to us as the next generations of Hopkintonians. I've participated on the Tax Relief Committee, which grants funds to help our seniors manage the increasing burden of our taxes. And so I've had experience with the town committee. I'm now clerk of that organization. I've also been a part of a number of nonprofit organizations that really where my role as a financial manager or as a general participant has been to ensure that funds are dispersed according to the mission of that organization. And so that's something that I have experience in that's directly relevant. I also have an MBA with a focus in public and nonprofit management, and I've pursued studies in fundraising, in grant making, and in estate planning at BU recently.
Okay. Gerald?
Yeah, I think the two things that you need in this job is a willingness to do some homework, to work with people. And then there's the application of the rules and the laws. I spent 40 years in the Department of Defense. My job was financial manager. And what I did was, besides managing budgets for projects anywhere from a few thousand to hundreds of millions of dollars, is apply the law and advise senior managers on the application, the federal laws, appropriation law, to ensure that the taxpayers' money was spent for the purpose intended. In our case, you go to jail if you didn't. On a very smaller scale, that's what you're doing here. You have to understand your role, the law that applies to you, the rules that apply to the 5 trusts, and implement them, and work with the people that are responsible for administering. Like I said, it's a serious job. I would be glad to give my time in doing it. And I think it's really enjoyable because you're working with a bunch of people that are dedicated to making this town better. And what could be more fun?
Okay, terrific. I think we are ready for our closing statements. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes for a closing statement. And we will start off with Tom Garabedian.
I guess you've had an opportunity over the past 3 years to observe the way that I help to moderate town meeting. I think I've clearly articulated issues that come before the town, and I think I've been respectful of the people who come to the mic to participate in town meeting. I also think I bring a little bit of a light touch and a sense of humor, since we're together for 8, 10, 12 hours discussing some very serious issues, and occasionally, we need a break in order to maintain our collegiality as members of this community. If you have approved of the job that I've done, I would simply ask you to consider reelecting me this coming May 20. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Ellen, 2 minutes for a closing statement.
So I think that what I would bring as your town moderator is a fresh perspective. I've been a participant in town meeting and many other civic engagement kind of things with many meetings. And most importantly, my job is moderating meetings. That's what I do day in and day out. So I have lots of experience bringing different people together, making sure they feel heard, making sure that the conversation is fair and balanced, and that everyone understands what we're talking about and what our direction is going to be before we move forward. So those are some of the skills I would bring to town moderator if I were chosen. Many of you had the opportunity to see me moderate in the special town meeting in February. I got some really fabulous feedback from folks that were there or who saw me in a follow-up video that they watched. So you have a sense of how I would be up there, and I hope you'll take me into consideration and cast your vote for me on May 20th. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Thanks. As I mentioned before, this is really something where I'm motivated by the idea of continuing forth on a legacy, an important legacy that our benefactors have created for the town. These people really loved Hopkinton, and it turns out that the values that they have expressed in these trusts are very much the same values that we hold important to us as the current residents. And these are the value of education, respect for our heritage, and the beautification of our wonderful surroundings here in town. And I'm fascinated by the continuity of that, and I want to be a part of that history of this town. I think I bring the skills and abilities to be able to not only follow what the strict requirements of each trust are, but also to ask questions when we're not sure. And interpreting legal documents really isn't the role of the commissioners. It's to follow them, and where there's ambiguity, to ask and find out. I have experience working with the town treasurer, with other town committees, and I'm really comfortable. These are all great people. The commissioners that are in place right now are very committed. They've taken a lot of care in how they disperse the funds, and I'm eager to be a part of that, and again, continuing that tradition as well. So I hope you'll vote for me. I'm really interested in the job. And if anybody has questions about my qualifications or intents, I'd welcome questions. Obviously not in this forum, but give me a shout. And I hope you vote for me on the 20th.
Okay, thank you. Gerald?
Yeah, so I think if you've been listening for the last 20 minutes, you know what my background, my experience, my skills are. I can do this. I want to do it. I think I would do a good job. I think I would enjoy it. I've also listened to Susan, and my closing statement would be, this is one race where the voter can't lose. You can vote for me, you can vote for Susan. You can't make a bad choice here. And thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight.
All right, well, I would like to once again thank our town moderator and Commissioner of Trust Funds candidates who participated today. That will do it for the first portion of our Hopkinton Town Election Contested Races Candidates Debate. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we will hear from our Parks and Recreation Commission candidates. Stay tuned. We will be right back with more debate on HCAM.
This week on HCAM, E-Hop gets us ready for town meeting with Know Your Vote.
Thanks for inviting me. So in 2016, we did purchase a used ladder truck. It was $125,000 total cost. We purchased it for $115,000, and we invested another 10 into some standardized equipment that's on that, like a radio.
Welcome back to the HCAM 2019 Contested Races Candidates Debates. For those just tuning in, our panelists this evening include freelance reporter and HCAM board member Michelle Murdoch, and myself, HCAM News Director Tom Nappy. Our format for these debates is simple. Michelle and I will alternate asking each candidate questions, and they will have up to 1 minute to respond. If you hear the bell, you have 10 seconds remaining. If a candidate has a follow-up response to another candidate's comment, they can state they would like to make an additional comment. I will cue them, and the candidate will have 30 seconds for the comment. A panelist may ask a follow-up question, and the candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond. Following the question and answers, each candidate will have up to 2 minutes each for a closing statement. Our second Contested Races Candidates Debate of the evening features candidates for Parks and Recreation Commission. Our candidates include Evan Davis, Peter Edwards, and Cynthia Estimer. There are 3 candidates for 1 open 3-year seat. Before we start, I would like to thank you all for taking the time to participate this evening. And without further ado, we'll get started with the questions. I have the first question, and that question is, what inspired you to run for this position? What experience and qualifications will you bring to the commission if elected? We'll start off with Evan.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Michelle. What prompted me to run? My family and I moved to Hopkinton in 2017 and were welcomed with unbelievable open arms by this community. And I knew immediately, right then and there, I had to give back. I have two daughters. Both are involved in Parks and Rec and many of the programs that they run, from youth soccer to lacrosse, volleyball clinics, all sorts of things. And having seen the growth of the town that we're going through, and I knew that our Parks and Rec department, with our amazing facilities, is going to have to be able to weather that storm of growth and really kind of grow with it. My experience is I've worked for a long time with Boston for Boston Public Schools and the Parks and Rec department there, helping them to identify areas of need where they could fix their athletic department, their athletic facilities, their facilities as a whole. I've done a lot of fundraising in my time, and I believe that experience will help us to find alternative ways to raise money for our department.
Peter?
First of all, thanks for having me. What made me run? Timing is never perfect, but participation in government has always been something I've seen throughout my family. I've been born and raised here in Hopkinton. A lot of my family is still here because it is such an enjoyable town. So I wanted to contribute to that. We are going through a lot of growth right now, so I think to wait wasn't really an option. I'd like to be involved and help with some of the decision making that's going to happen as we do grow, because growing's tough, and decisions need to be made. But on the Parks and Rec side, this is kind of the forward-facing department for the town. This is what a lot of people get enjoyment out of. It's very important that we are administering everything that the town wants and in a cost-effective way. Professionally, I'm a real estate broker. I also invest in real estate. So if you look at our parks and the programs that we have, they're assets to me. And we should be looking at how we can use those assets efficiently and making sure that they're being utilized the right way.
Thank you, Tom. I'm at the point in my career at last when I can spend more time volunteering and less time commuting and working. So this is a great time for me to be able to give more time back to the town. My background is as director of after-school programming in the city of Newton. I think that it tailors me perfectly to move into a commissioner's role of Parks and Recreation. In my job, I certainly watched generations of children grow up and develop their interests and provided programming for a broad range of children, not just certainly sports, but those who like to fish, those who liked art and music, and on and on. And our Parks and Rec department here in Hopkinton is extraordinary for the broad range of things that we offer. So I would love to be able to support that. More particularly, though, in my work with the City of Newton, I needed to collaborate with the school committee, with Parks and Recreation, with Planning and Development, Police and Fire, and it's important to be able to collaborate, communicate, and work with all the important boards and commissions we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michelle has the next question, and Peter can answer first.
Okay, so the next question is there any facility not currently in town that you would like to see? So anything new that, is on your agenda for adding to Parks and Rec?
I guess I'm not really looking to spend any more money, but there's no other facility that I can actually think of that I think I'd be more concentrating on trying to use what we have. And then as the demand for other things come up, we just evaluate that and to see, what the participation level might be I think there's a lot of things that we have that might be underutilized. I grew up on Lakeshore Drive on Lake Maspinock, and I believe Sandy Beach is an underutilized asset that the town has. I think there's some ways that we can use it to attract more people to be there, whether it's, inviting some local musicians to play there on the weekends, or having a food truck in the parking lot on the weekends and charging them some sort of rent. There's different things that we can do to really enhance the experience.
Okay, great.
All right, Cynthia?
I agree with Peter. I would not advocate developing a new facility at this point in time. However, I would be very interested in supporting every effort to take good care of the properties that we do have. In terms of the center school gym, for example, an indoor facility, how can Parks and Recreation help make that a better space for all the people who use it day and night? So I would not advocate starting a new facility at this time, rather taking good care of the grounds and parks in particular.
Okay.
Okay, Evan?
I think I may come from a different angle than my two counterparts in that I believe, do we need to build new facilities? No. Do I think in the very near future we need to look towards expanding our facilities? Yes. If you look at Fruit Street, for example, the turf field supplied by the Soccer Association, we have a grass field there. We have more land that we could develop. I don't necessarily think that we need to do it through town funding. I think there's an opportunity for us to find corporate and private funding to expand those. If you also look at our fields, for example, in Emerald Hills or down Emerald Hills specifically, and Daniel Shays, those fields aren't irrigated. There's no irrigation in those fields, so come middle of the summer, they're basically dust bowls and unusable. There are areas where we can really improve our facilities that we have to. If you were to say, let's build a new facility, come next year, center school may be off the table, which means we are running drastically low on indoor space, indoor usable space. We are going to have to find another way to provide indoor space for all the different programs that we want to run or possibly could run in the future.
Thank you. All right, I have the next question, and we'll have Cynthia answer first. Are there any additional programs you would like to see, and how come?
Well, I think an underserved population are the seniors. You may remember the seniors who have paid for all the wonderful fields and facilities that we have in town. Well, I think Parks and Recreation is, in fact, for everyone, and I'd love to see some more programming developed for seniors, which may include passive recreation things and collaboration with some of our other groups in town, like HALT, with the great trails and things we have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Evan?
I would absolutely agree with Cynthia on that number. We do need more programs for seniors. I think in talking with Jay and his team, one of the things I've learned, for example, there is a sport called pickleball, which is a sport that everybody has wanted to play. Again, we don't have the facilities for them. We need to figure out a way to supply that. Walking trails. I think also one of our underserved groups are actually our middle teens, kids who maybe aren't great soccer players or great sporting athletes. There are no sport programs that I can see for those 14 to 18-year-olds that maybe aren't involved in high school sports. But we want to get them out doing things in the community. We need to start offering even more alternative programs for them as well.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
I would have to agree with Cynthia again on the seniors. I think I had the opportunity to watch my grandfather experience a lot of excellent things up at the senior center, but everything was pretty much done up there. They did travel to different places here and there, but I think getting them out and enjoying some of the resources we have, whether it be a concert at Sandy Beach instead of the Common, or just exploring different parts of the town. And that's not just the oldest population when I see seniors. I mean, I think I heard a gentleman ask a question the other day of, he wants to stay here. He's afraid about the taxes, but again, he wants to stay here. So there's a quality of life that a lot of people are looking for. We obviously have a great Parks and Rec department that offers a lot of competitive sports, and we want to continue to do that and grow with that. But offering some other programs that everybody can enjoy, I think, is very important.
Okay, thank you. All right, Michelle has the next question, and we'll have Evan answer first.
Okay, so next question is, do you support the new proposed location for the dog park at Fruit Street? And if so, what can you do to help ensure this project's success?
I do. Having lived in a town where a dog park was a huge social gathering place, I think it is a great addition to what we do. I can tell you the groups that use the Fruit Street fields are not happy that people walk their dogs over there. So having a separate place where those dogs could be walked is a great addition. It's a great social part that we can add to our Parks and Rec department. So yeah, it's something that I would definitely support and would try to help us figure out a way to fund it and make sure that it is done in a way that it's beneficial to the entire community.
Okay.
Okay, Cynthia.
I think it's excellent that the proposed location of the park has changed to the Fruit Street area. I think it's an improvement from the first plans we had. I think it's a perfect location for it because there is enough separation of space from the athletic fields that'll keep it separate. And at the same time, it'll make it a family affair where perhaps the 14-year-old may go over to the dog park and hang with some friends there and run the dogs while the rest of the family is at the soccer game. I think it's a really good place for it. Good thing.
Okay, Peter.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I actually live in a pet-free household, and I have two daughters that are deathly afraid of dogs. But I think, again, it's, when you asked about adding a facility, that was probably one of the ones that we were potentially missing as a well-rounded suburb community that people would be looking for. I mean, dog parks help people meet each other. And I think it was a really smart decision to relocate it to the Fruit Street Fields. I believe, as I understand it, there's some grant money, and between grant money and some CPC funds, it should be pretty much funded to be done. So I support it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Michelle has the next question, and we'll have Cynthia answer first.
Okay, I'm actually going to change. I'm going to change yet again because I need a yes/no from them all first.
Okay.
Before they give away the answer to the next person somewhat. So we'll go with that. So the question is, are you familiar with the term enterprise fund?
Yes.
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 And then the next question was basically, how does it relate to Parks and Rec, and how do you feel about how it's managed?
I'm not sure the best way to answer that because the enterprise fund, as I've listened to town meeting over 30 odd years, is very, very complicated. And I don't think I have a really good answer for that, except I'm not sure how much of the enterprise fund feeds into Parks and Recreation, in that Parks and Recreation has a very large budget of its own. It has a very good income because of all the fees and things that it charges. So I'm not sure.
Peter?
Yeah, I would kind of side with her on that I am not 100% sure on how that functions. I've heard the enterprise fund. At the end of the day, it comes down to how much is the Parks and Rec costing the taxpayer, and whether we're able to use the money that we have, no matter what fund it comes from, in order to provide exactly what people want.
Okay, Evan.
From what I understand from the enterprise fund is that Parks and Rec operates on about an annual budget of about $700,000 a year. I think the town supplies somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 of that from the enterprise fund. The rest of that is made up by Parks and Rec through rentals and the programs that they run. So as of right now, Parks and Rec is operating at a basis where they can sustain themselves. I think as we move forward, though, and our town grows, that fund may need to be increased. And by improving our facilities and expanding our facilities, Parks and Rec will also be able to augment their income through rentals and more programs that they offer through pay.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, now it's time for closing statements. Each candidate will have up to 2 minutes for a closing statement, and we will start off with Peter.
Thank you. I'd like to start by just saying that I've loved the opportunity of being up here. I think there's a lot of great people in this room, so thank you. I did grow up in this town. I guess you would qualify me as a townie. A service to the town has been something I've seen again throughout my family, and it's something that I want to do for the long term. This isn't a short stint that I plan to do. I learned how to swim at Sandy Beach learned to swim through Parks and Rec. I played youth soccer at Elmwood School. I played youth baseball. I graduated from the high school. My Hopkinton experience was driven through Parks and Rec as a kid, especially into sports. And I still believe in, the competitive nature of sports and being active and participating. I still play men's league hockey. And what I want to do as if I'm elected to this board is just, contribute my skills and, vision for what, the assets that we have can be, how they can be utilized to the best of their ability in a cost-effective way. And then also think kind of long-term of, what other things that we may need down the line as we do grow. We are definitely in a growing situation. But I think it's only going to be good, as long as we maintain the things that we have and then grow those things in a smart manner. We'll continue to have great experiences throughout town. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan?
Thank you all for having me, first of all, and having all of us. I don't think Parks and Rec could be in any better situation than having the three of us up here, because we're going to win no matter who gets elected. I think the most valuable thing that we can give to our town is time. And what I mean by that is you can join a board, you can join a group, but if you don't show up, not just to the meetings, but to those events and are part of the public and helping out that group, then I don't think we're doing our job. I'm going to give my time to Parks and Rec, my time to Hopkinton. This town has already given my family so much in 2 years that I believe we owe it to give it to them back. So I hope you'll vote for me, and I look forward to serving the town of Hopkinton for the many years to come.
Thank you. Cynthia?
It is remarkable that there are three folks up here. It speaks very well of our Parks and Recreation Department. We're very fortunate here. The commissioners serve as an oversight group, and as such, it is not important for the commissioners to get down into the weeds and to rethink what the director has on his table. Rather, we should listen very carefully and act in a supportive role. It happens that I have an art, music, and performing arts background, which makes me a very creative problem solver. And as a leader, I feel that I would not need to lead the commission, rather sit back and support in any way I can. And it's my turn to serve the town. So thank you.
Thank you. I would like to once again thank our commissioners for Parks and Recreation candidates who participated today. That will do it for this portion of our Hopkinton Town Election Contested Races Candidates Debate. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we will hear from our Planning Board 2-year term candidates. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more debate on HCAM.
This week on HCAM, E-Hop gets us ready for town meeting with Know Your Vote.
Thanks for inviting me. So in 2016, we did purchase a used ladder truck. It was It was $125,000 total cost. We purchased it for $115,000 and we invested another 10 into some standardized equipment that's on that, like a radio.
Welcome back to the HCAM 2019 Contested Races Candidates Debate. For those just tuning in, our panelists this evening include freelance reporter and HCAM board member Michelle Murdoch and myself, HCAM News Director Tom Nappy. Our format for these debates is simple. Michelle and I will alternate asking each candidate questions, and they will have up to 1 minute to respond. If you hear the bell, you have 10 seconds remaining. If a candidate has a follow-up response to another candidate's comment, they can state they would like to make an additional comment. I will cue them, and the candidate will have 30 seconds for the comment. A panelist may ask a follow-up question, and the candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond. Following the question and answers, each candidate will have up to 2 minutes each for a closing statement. This portion of our Contested Races Candidates Debate features candidates for the 2-year term on the planning board. And with us, we have Robert Benson Jr. Unfortunately, his opponent, Michael McNamara, was unable to make it this evening, but we'll ask some questions to Robert here. So Robert, thank you for joining us. And with the first question, that would be me. So first off, what inspired you to run for planning board, and what experience and qualifications will you bring to the board if elected?
So I consider myself a townie. I've been here most of my life. Lived in town 33 years besides going away to college. I went to Elmwood School when Elmwood School was the new school in town. The changes people talk about, I've been here through those changes. I understand why people want to live here. I want to live here too. We all want to live here. So I understand why other people want to live here too. By schooling, the first part of my career, I was an engineer, so I can understand and read plans and help other board members understand those plans or relay my impression of those plans. In my present position, I've moved into a leadership position where I listen to customers and relay that customer input into a product roadmap and what we're going to do as a company to satisfy clients. As a planning board member, I feel I'm well suited to take public input and relay that into actions and votes that can help the planning board and help the community.
Thank you. All right, Michelle has the next question, and Robert can answer first.
Okay, so next question is, a hot topic in town is growth, and what steps can or should the planning board be taking to address that growth? And you can share your thoughts on what you think about that.
I think the planning board needs to, it's really two phases. There's the reactive side of the planning board and what they need to do when projects come before them. They need to react to projects and the growth that projects bring about. But then they also need to plan the future of growth of Hopkinton. And the Hopkinton kind of vision statement right on the town website, and I believe this is relates to the planning board, is to remember the past, be engaged in the present, and plan for the future. And so a big part of the planning board is reacting to what's in front of them to do what's in the best interest of the townspeople that they have control over. But there are zoning bylaws and there are rules. They just don't have carte blanche to do what they want to do. So they have to react to plans in front of them. But the biggest part is plan for the future.
Okay, and Michelle, you have the next question as well.
Which are we going here? Oh, sorry. My fault. Okay, the next question is, do you support the 2 citizens petitions to limit growth, and why not?
I think the 2 citizens petitions are complicated in terms of the concept. I think is great, but the reality of limiting growth and the funding aspect of it, it needs to be there needs to be a rationale of what is the funding impact of limiting that growth. The town right now relies on some level of growth to fund new schools, new projects, new things in town. Without some level of growth, new money being brought into town will limit that funding, and there will need to be a certain amount of Prop 2.5 overrides. So I like the concept. I like the idea of slowing things down, and I really want to make that work. But without a balance of what's the impact to people's taxpayers' dollars, I think it's a tough decision to make without that, knowing what that impact's going to be.
I do have a follow-up to that. So my follow-up question is, how do you feel about the fact that this attempt to limit growth is being brought before town meeting as a citizen's petition versus through an article sponsored by the planning board? And I believe the planning board has voted not to support these petitions.
As I understand it, it was a member of the champion of the citizens' petitions was a planning board member, and they couldn't, and she wanted more public discussion on the topic, so that's why she put forward the citizens' petition. And I think it's a great avenue to bring forth discussion of it. But I don't see the cause and effect. If we do this, what's the effect? Like, I think there should be some balance of, okay, limiting growth is really good, and right now there's a lot of strain on town services, and continued growth is going to strain that further. But without that growth, what is that going to impact on all the articles on town meeting, like buying a new ladder truck, and just talked about dog park, and renovating EMC playground? All those things cost money. Without some level of growth, it's going to increase people's tax burden.
Okay. And the next question is, do you support establishing a single property historic district at 76 Main Street, or otherwise known as Claflin House? Why or why not?
So I think there's really two parts to that question. I think there's the part of spot zoning, and then there's a second part of the general idea of having an apartment building, a mixed-use apartment building in downtown at that location. The idea of a mixed-use apartment building there fundamentally is a scary proposition. I don't like that idea. As a citizen of town, as not as a planning board member, I don't like that general idea. I don't like the idea of that. But the effect of spot zoning, just because a developer bought a property and now enforcing a new rule, is would give pause to future development projects if people buying or developing projects in Hopkinton where the rug could be pulled out from them. So I think it's a complicated issue, but it's two parts to me. No, I don't really want that to be developed into an apartment building with a restaurant and a retail storefront. But the precedent of spot zoning is a precedent that could have ramifications that we can't even predict in the future.
Okay, thank you. Michelle, you have the next question.
Okay, next question relates to civic engagement, and if you could talk about how you are currently involved in local government. For instance, do you attend a town meeting on a regular basis since you've been here? And just, how do you learn about issues that are happening in town, and what have you done to sort of get up to speed with what the planning board is working on?
So since I've been actively considering running for planning board, I've been attending planning board meetings in person. I have two younger twin boys that are 8, so making it out to every planning board meeting prior to running or every town meeting sometimes is a challenge. But I go when I feel there's issues that I need to go for. I really felt strongly about the turf fields, went to a town meeting. I felt strongly about rezoning a parcel of Legacy Farms from commercial to basically residential. And so I go when I can. Other civic engagements is I volunteer in the community with Hopkins Youth Basketball. We just had Parks and Recs up here, Hopkins Youth Basketball, Youth Soccer, and Little League. And as far as being informed, a lot of it is through HCAM.
Terrific. And our next question is, are you familiar with the zoning articles to be voted on at town meeting? And if so, is there any that you have strong feelings for or against?
I think some of the zoning articles are there's one about the banner size. There's a zoning article about adding the word cultural. I think it's cultural building or cultural uses for an international marathon facility. It's more of a clarification. The biggest one is the articles, I think it's 36 and 37, which are kind of two different options to address the basically the building complex within Legacy Farms. There's 180 units and 18 are to be built as affordable housing. But in that, the state changed the law where those affordable housing units can't have age restriction for kids 18 or less, which was built into that into the zoning bylaw for that development. So I think that's the most important article put forth those two put forth by the planning board. I think the general concern of the town at town meeting is going to be growth of the schools and basically the $43 million of bonds the town has bought to develop Marathon School, the addition to Marathon School. So I think the one to limit, to basically open that up to not be age restricted is going to be a challenge at town meeting.
Thank you. We will now give you up to 2 minutes to make a closing statement.
So you had asked about town meeting. So the first town meeting I ever went to, I was much younger, but it was, I mentioned this at Know the Candidate Night, was the town meeting that they wanted to put whether the town's going to buy the Mezit land or Legacy, the land now known as Legacy Farms, on the ballot for the town people to vote on it. And that town meeting has kind of been in my thoughts kind of ever since. The town really was divided at that point in time. That town meeting was the biggest one I think they'd ever had, and it was a lot of heat about that at that time. And so since then, I've been busy starting a family with my wife, raising kids, developing my career. Now I think it's time for me to give back, and I feel like the planning board is what has always interested me as far as giving back to the community. And I'm not looking to join the planning board because I'm looking for something else to do. I'm looking to join the planning board because it's what I want to do. And I'm hoping everybody sees that and is willing to cast a vote for me on May 20th.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your participation today. I'd like to once again thank Robert for his participation in today's candidates debate. That will do it for this portion of our Hopkinton Town Election Contested Races candidates debate. We are going to take a short break. When we come back, we will hear from our final group of candidates this evening, the Board of Selectmen. Stay tuned. We will be right back with more debate on HCAM.
This week on HCAM, E-Hop gets us ready for town meeting with Know Your Vote.
Thanks for inviting me. So in 2016, we did purchase a used ladder truck. It was $125,000 total cost. We purchased it for $115,000, and we invested another 10 into some standardized equipment that's on that, like a radio.
Welcome back to the HCAM 2019 Contested Races Candidates Debates. For those just tuning in, our panelists this evening include freelance reporter and HCAM board member Michelle Murdoch and myself, HCAM News Director Tom Nappy. Our format for these debates is simple. Michelle and I will alternate asking each candidate questions, and they will have up to 1 minute to respond. If you hear the bell, you have 10 seconds remaining. If a candidate has a follow-up response to another candidate's comment, they can state they would like to make an additional comment. I will cue them, and the candidate will have 30 seconds for the comment. A panelist may ask a follow-up question, and the candidate will have up to 1 minute to respond. Following the question and answers, each candidate will have up to 2 minutes each for a closing statement. The final portion of our Contested Races Candidates Debate features candidates for a 3-year term to the Board of Selectmen. With us are candidates Brendan Tedstone, Claire Wright, Mary Jo Lafreniere, Shahidul Manin. There are 4 candidates for 2 open seats. Before we start, I would like to thank you all for taking the time to participate this evening. Our first question is going to be, what inspired you to run, and what experience and qualifications will you bring to the board if elected? Claire can answer first.
Well, I think right now we know Hopkinton is experiencing some rapid growth and some rapid change, and I think it's very valuable for the town to have some experienced leadership. I have worked for many years for the town of Hopkinton on various boards of committees. I will offer leadership that is focused on fiscal responsibility, on keeping Hopkinton a well-managed, prosperous town, and with a commitment to maintaining strong schools, a strong community, and a commitment to our community character. I have served for over 30 years on various town boards, 15 on the planning board, and a whole host of other boards and committees. I think the importance of that is not just putting in the years, but the understanding you get of the community, understanding who we are, where we've come from, how we got here, for instance, all the discussions about legacy, to understand how that project developed. And so I will offer strong and respectful leadership with a depth of understanding and a commitment to the town.
Thank you. Mary Jo.
I have decided to run because I have been involved in many boards and activities in this town. I have been on the Board of Assessors off and on for about 20 years. I worked 10 years in the office years ago, and I became a professional assessor for the towns of Holliston and Plainville. I have done recap sheets. I have worked very hard on finances for the communities that I was a professional in, as well as the town of Hopkinton as chairman of the Board of Assessors. And I really feel that I'm retired now, and I have more time to dedicate, even though I've been on five boards and commissions in the town in fact, I'm on 4 now still. And I love Hopkinton. I chose to be a member of this community. I came here and I brought myself forward, volunteered for all these things. I've been 35 years on the Marathon Committee, and I really think that financially, with my background, that I can help with the growth and I can help with the fiscal problems of the town.
Okay, thank you. Brendan.
Good evening. Thank you very much. So I've been a selectman for 3 years. I've been in town for my whole life. I don't feel comfortable talking about me. We as the board for the last 3 years, I think we've done a pretty good job. We've had a lot of healthy discussion, a lot of differing opinions, and a lot of just respectful back and forth. I think my ability to listen, my full-time job, I'm a nurse manager of a dementia unit. I deal with some pretty complicated, pretty powerful situations every day, and to be able to extrapolate the fact in the conversation, being very level-headed, that's kind of my strength. I don't think there's anybody that knows the town better than me. And that might sound a little bit arrogant, but I think I've earned that. You know, I started on the fire department as soon as I was, as a volunteer, as soon as I was legally able to. Had a relationship with them since 1989. And I just want to continue on being a selectman 3 more years and keep Hopkinen great.
All right, thank you. Shahidul.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm running for 2 key reasons. One is that my dad, who was a professor for 40 years, served the community all through his life, and that value passed on to us. So I want to give back to the community. That's why 7 years ago, when we came to Hopkinton, as soon as I got the opportunity, I joined the Appropriations Committee. And after serving 4 years, I think I'm prepared to contribute more. That's why I'm running. I'm running because I think the town is now going through a special time with tremendous growth, with our budget reaching 100 million. I think it's very important that the leadership also have that budget oversight, have that vision and strategic perspective. And we have a lot of great leaders, no doubt, but I think I add that value with my Appropriations Committee experience. And also on the professional side, I've been in corporate leadership, technology leadership for decades. And I think combining these two, I can add that value with strategic perspective and fiscal oversight. And I love this town. We are raising our kids in this town, and I will do what's best for this town.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will ask the next question, and Mr. Mannon can answer first. And the next question is, what do you feel are the biggest issues or challenges facing the town in the coming year? And if elected, what are your top priorities? Mr. Mannon?
Thank you, sure. I think I'll focus on 3 key top priorities. The first one I touched a little bit, which is with this growth, tremendous growth, we are seeing a lot of pressure on our services, school being the first one, and then, of course, fire, police, DPW, all the key water, all the key areas. We're seeing traffic congestion. So I think it's very critical that we have a comprehensive strategic plan and a detailed roadmap how we are going to manage this growth, how it's going to fiscally as well as town's best interest-wise be managed going forward. And that will be my top priority, connecting the strategic view with the budget and with all these services, so we have the quality of life that we have, and we manage the growth such that it helps us handle the budget and handle the town's priorities properly. And the second one is taxes rising, so I'll focus on that, bringing in new or supporting new revenue through commercial growth. And third is the school, but they're not in particular order. School probably would be my top priority from various angles, because I think school is the jewel of the town, and schools build great towns. So I think school, tax, and managing growth, these 3 are the key. But having said that, the managing growth kind of touches all of those, so that'll be the focus from all angles. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire?
Well, certainly controlling our budget, and that affects all the other aspects. The new growth plays a very strong role in keeping our taxes where they are. In fact, this last year, the new growth in town actually made for over 55% of our increased costs were covered by our new growth. But yet we need to find that balance between controlling that growth, but still keeping our budgets under control, and also at the same time providing services to all our citizens. We understand that the schools take up the lion's share of the budget, but our other citizens deserve services as well. And we also, I think it's important that we don't price people out of this town. Part of the value of living in Hopkinton is the diversity of incomes and ages, as well as our many new cultures. And so it's important that we manage our growth in such a way that we remain the kind of diverse community that we are.
Mary Jo?
It's growth is a really complicated subject. It also is a very emotional subject, as well as a fiscal challenge. And I think that we really have to look at all aspects of the town. And I really agree with the planning board when they want to put together a panel to do just that. We need to update our master plan, and we need to update our bylaws, and we need to focus on future so that we know what's coming and we don't get hit with more than we expect. And that's kind of what happened last year. Uh, I I feel that we need to take care of all our citizenry. The people who've been in this town need to be acknowledged as having built it and made it the community that we all wanted to come to, and we all wanted to make our homes here. And so we need to find ways to help keep them in their homes and help them with their taxes. I am supporting the Brave Acts, which is giving some tax relief to veterans. It's new this year, and we have a number of programs for tax relief, and I support those.
Brandon.
So, our town is the #1 safest town in the country, so we can't get much better than that. Our schools are the 3rd best in the state. That's pretty impressive. What we need to do is figure out a way to keep our services at level services while trying to keep our taxes and our expenses in check. So in order to remain as viable as we can, we need to find different ways to to create tax base. Is that, enticing more bioscience corporations to come onto South Street? Is it more small businesses on Main Street? Is it businesses overall? My goal is to with the level services, keep our town as great as it is with the with the amount of money that we have to spend. So, I don't want to price the seniors out. The seniors are very near and dear to my heart. That's it.
Michelle has the next question, and Brendan can answer first.
Okay, all right, you've already gone down the path a little bit. Growth is obviously a hot topic, so it keeps coming up. But my question is, what role, if any, does the Board of Selectmen play in the actual planning for and dealing with growth?
So,
What role do they play?
So the Board of Selectmen is bound, like, we're the chief executive officer, basically, of the town. So we deal with policy, we deal with everything that comes in front of us. The planning board deals with what can go where, when it can go. The zoning deals with, the zoning aspects of the town. We deal with the policy. We're not really too in-depth and too hands-on on the day-to-day operations of the town. We deal with, so we had a lot to do with that lichen bioscience TIF, kind of pressing that into the town and trying to get them here to increase business, to increase revenue commercially, so take some of the burden off some of the taxpayers residentially. So we deal with growth as much as we're allowed to deal with, but a lot of the other committees in towns deal with the actual growth that's faced upon them, and then so we just kind of deal with the policy of the growth.
Okay, Shahidul?
I think Selectman is the highest leadership office of the town. And the key roles that will impact the strategic planning is, first of all, leadership goes a long way as a facilitator, as a building the consensus or building all the right key players together to plan and build that momentum to have that connected plan and strategic view that I was talking about. And that will be impacted by the policies that the selectmen choose or evangelizes. And at the same time, the other key part of the selectmen is having the budget policy and reviewing the budget and submitting it to the town's highest legislative, which is the town meeting. Through these set of, I would say, roles, the selectmen can definitely impact as well as lead building out that strategic policy. And of course, working with all the committees, planning commission, as well as board of all the other boards, the school committee, and all the town administration and appropriations committee. But I think it's as a leader, key leader of the town, selectman plays that role to lead and be as a facilitator with the policy and the execution through budget can really impact that.
Okay. Claire?
Yes, it has been already said, issues such as master plan are not the purview of the Board of Selectmen. That falls under the planning board. But again, how we manage the budget, how we decide that services are going to be delivered, how we control the tax rate, and also both recently and looking back over time, selectmen have made very key decisions in infrastructure decisions, whether it was taking the lead in sewering parts of the town that didn't have sewer, or providing water service, development of town wells that allow development that support businesses on South Street. And right now, like it or not, there's a lot of controversy over it, but the Main Street Corridor project, which has been led by the Board of Selectmen as another impetus to bring more vitality and more business and a facelift to the downtown. Infrastructure improvements come through the Board of Selectmen and play a big role in the vitality and the attractiveness of business, as well as Mr. Tedstone said, things like TIFs for LICAN that are going to be a big contributor to our vitality.
Thank you. Mary Jo?
Well, I have definitely administered TIFs as an assessor in other communities, so I did support the TIF, and I know what that is all about. I am a real believer in the elected officials and the officials of the other boards, and I really believe that they should do their jobs, and the Board of Selectmen should be like almost like a clearinghouse, that they should come before the board with their answers to the questions for the town and their budgets, and it's up to the selectmen to decide what goes on town meeting, what doesn't go on town meeting, what they can afford, what we can't afford. And we have to communicate well with other boards like the planning board, but we have to let them, they're elected officials, and we have to let them do their jobs, and I'm not a micromanager. I don't want to manage what the zoning boards and the planning board do, but I want them to do their job and bring it to us, and what we can support them in everything they do. And I believe in supporting our elected officials. Thank you.
All right. Michelle has the next question, and Mary Jo can answer first.
Okay, well, now we're going to go down the budget path that also has been mentioned. One of the roles of the selectmen typically is to set the budget message at the beginning of the process, and I'd like you to describe the issues that are most important to you and that you will consider when making this recommendation.
Oh. The issues, well, all the issues pretty much when you come to budgets are financial. And you really have to look at every single budget and every single line item, and you have to make some tough decisions. Some decisions you're going to make and you're going to say, okay, we have to cut, and we're going to have to cut some budgets, and that's inevitable. And other budgets we can support. And we really have to work with all the departments as they bring their budgets forward to see what is absolutely necessary and what is not. And it's very difficult to tell people you can't have what you want all the time. But that is the job of leadership, and that is the job that the Board of Selectmen must do. And we must look at all the ways of getting in excess money. Like, well, new growth is only a one-shot deal, but all the other estimated receipts that we get from the state and other governments are another part of that, how we figure out our finances.
Brandon?
So, over the last 3 years, we've had quite an uphill battle to try to send a balanced budget to town meeting. Last year, we brought on the Marathon School, the DPW, and the library. We don't have a choice as a town. We have to send a balanced budget to town meeting. We can't say we're going in with a deficit, or it has to be balanced. So the schools take a huge portion of that, and it's reflective of the wonderful job that they do. the fire, the DPW. We sit in a room and we hash it out with the department heads of all, the superintendent, the school committee, the fire chief, the police chief, the DPW director, IT, everybody. We sit in there, and it really does get down to what you need for brass tacks in order to do our bare bones budget to bring as our level services, at least, if not better services. So, you know, it's very important for our schools to continue on as they're continuing. We need police, we need fire, we need DPW. It's just a matter of everybody working together and getting to that balanced budget, with us being the facilitators to make sure that budget gets balanced.
Okay. Thank you. Shahidul.
I think from the policy perspective, again, having that vision and making sure that the budget is connected to the vision, be it the master plan, which I think and I think I heard from my colleagues that everyone agrees needs a lot more work. So once we have an upgraded or updated master plan, making sure that the budget is connected to that, making sure we set the priorities, and certainly growth, managing the services with the growth, that making that clear. But here's the important part of that. After the initial policy guidelines provided and asking the town officials to build the budget or have the budget come back, it is, I think, important that the town leadership works and facilitates with them. It's not about micromanaging, but about understanding what are the priorities, how they're managed, and how, again, it's connected. If we are seeing a certain number of growth, is it connected and reflected in the school budget? Is it connected and reflected on the senior citizens or on the tax overall guidelines? Or is it connected on the DPW budget? If we do siloed kind of policy, that'll get us into trouble.
Thank you. Claire.
Well, for one thing, for the last few years when I've been involved in the budget, the instruction to all the committees has been to build the budget from the ground up. And what that means for every department and committee is don't assume anything. Don't assume that what you had last year is what you need this year. Start from the ground up and justify every single expense, because this year is not last year. A key part is collaboration, is working with the various departments. I want to make it clear that the Board of Selectmen does not cut individual departments' budgets. In fact, last year there was a big brouhaha that we were cutting fifth grade music. If there needed to be changes in the school department budget, we asked the school department to decide where they feel best the budget can be trimmed back. But we leave the individual decisions, the micromanaging, if you will, to the individual boards who know their budgets the best. We also have done a very good job of, I guess you would call it, creative financing. We've found that there are different ways of finding the resources. We run a tight ship, and we've been able to have a good, healthy amount of free cash, which has allowed us to fund a lot of expenses that don't have to be funded under the general budget. So good, tight management and letting each department make their own decisions, understanding the directive, is the best way to go about a tight budget.
Thank you. And Michelle has a follow-up, and Brendan can answer first.
Okay, so when we talked about budget message, and a lot of times there's, you know, in the past where they start from, and I guess I'm just asking, do you like to go level funded or level services? Which way do you lean? Do you have a preference for either or?
Absolutely. I like level services. You know, our services that we offer right now are wonderful. Like I've said, our schools, number 3 in the state. Our town being the number 1 safest town in the country. I don't know how you can expand from that. Fire's right up there. Level services are great, but we have to be able to do it fiscally responsibly in order to do that without taxing people out of the town.
Okay, Shahidul.
I agree with Brendan. I think level services would certainly be on the focus, but at the same time, I think Claire also mentioned it, that there's no free check. We want to make sure every time all the money that we spend are justified, either from the known factors or anything that's new is properly justified and scrutinized. And having said that, I also want to go back that level services is certainly kind of a must-have in my view, because we don't want to we don't want to lose any of the quality of the school or of the fire or the police. But at the same time, we want to again make sure that strategically we are moving forward and we are also putting that on the radar and not focusing on issue by issue on siloed matters as much. Even though it's urgent, we'll have to address it, but keep the focus on the big picture. And so it's aligned. I think that's also very critical.
Okay, thank you. Claire?
Yes, well, level services is part of what building the budget from the ground up would be. I think the town expects level services, but there's no reason that any department needs to expect that what they spent last year is necessarily what they have to spend or what they're entitled to spend this year. There are some things that have been aberrant one-time costs. There are ways that we find efficiencies so that we can reduce costs and still retain the same services. So the idea is that everyone needs to not only discern between needs and wants, but make sure that every single expense they're putting forward is really what they need to provide the services they need at this point in time. So yes, level services definitely, but that doesn't mean we can't look for economies and run a tight ship.
Mary Jo?
Well, I think we all agree. It's level services that we want to provide for everybody. And actually, when I worked for the town, we were doing level service budgets every year too, and that was 30 years ago. We can look at our expenses. We can look at everything from, like Claire says, from the ground up. We've always done line item by line item, total budgets. Every department that I know of has absolutely scrutinized their budgets and can justify every single penny that they wind up putting in. And when the Board of Selectmen suggests that we take another look at it, they take another look at the budget, and they still maintain level services. And it's just so important, both in the town hall, in the services that the people there render to the town, and the police, fire, DPW, schools. Sometimes we don't talk about our town hall employees and our assessors and tax collectors and the people who do our financial services equally need to be level service budgets.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question is, do you participate in community events, and do you feel it is important for a selectman to partake in community events? Shahidul can answer first.
Sure, I do, and of course, I wouldn't say I attend like 100% of all the events, but I do as much, and I always wanted to, and especially with my schools, with my kids going to school, I try to attend their events as well as I wanna feel the connection with the community. So I go to various cultural events as well as charity events when I get the opportunity. But having said that, I do think that it is important to connect and to go to the events. And as again, with our time permits. But the other factor I want to also mention is that participating in the events is important, but also to various bodies of the town that are focused on various issues, be it charity or be it town-related specific issues, and connect with them, understand the challenges or understand their mission, and participate or encourage or promote. I think that's how the connection can be established, and it's all together. Thank you.
Thank you. Claire?
Absolutely. Someone mentioned you only have so much time, but it is very important to represent the town, especially when they invite the Board of Selectmen. We're the face of the town. It's a wonderful opportunity to not only understand these various community organizations, but to hear from people. I think I have now spoken at 11 Eagle Scout Court of Honor ceremonies. Every single one has been special, and I can't tell you how much people appreciate when they see the support of the town. It really cements that feeling of community and that feeling of that each organization is a really integral part and that we recognize them and appreciate them. So absolutely, I think it's incredibly important, and I think it's something that every selectman should be expected to make time for.
Thank you. Mary Jo?
Well, I agree, and I think going to events and things in town, that has become my social life actually over the years. I mean, I've participated in lots of events, and uh, actually I was an American Legion member, and I'm sure people saw me many Memorial Days selling little red poppies to everybody. And I have been involved in Little League and all, just every kind of social town activity, and I continue to do so. And in fact, I see Claire at a lot of them. We wind up sitting together a lot. Um, Veterans breakfast, things like that. Uh, and it's really important to stay in touch with everybody, and it's a great way to meet people and to meet the other parents and people like you, being a single person, and I muchly enjoy the community, and the spirit of community is wonderful, and that's how you really get to know what Hopkinton is all about, by meeting the people at these social events and these events. And yes, every selectman should attend Memorial Day events and anything else that comes up in town.
Thank you. Brandon?
So I've been attending these events long before I was a selectman. I've been involved in Little League, basketball, baseball. I'm sorry, Little League is baseball, and softball. Soccer, lacrosse, Veterans Committee, Fireman's Sunday. I speak at that every year. The Police Fishing Derby. Any event that we can go to, I do my best to make it. I mean, I have a pretty full plate. I have 2 kids in town that do a whole lot of activities. So anything I can make. Claire and John and I marched in the Little League Parade this year. I do the Horribles Parade, where I am we are the.
You're the horrible.
I am the absolute butt of most of the jokes, which is fine. I got pretty thick skin. It's actually one of the greatest chores as a selectman is to be able to continue to go to these events and to take part in that.
Thank you. Okay, Michelle has the next question, and Claire can answer first.
Okay, we'll go back to the finances. The question is, do you support the underride that will be voted at town meeting and on the ballot this year, and why or why not?
That is a great question, because I was one of the 2 dissenting votes against it. And it's not because I am against anything that's going to limit the amount the town can take from taxes. An underride, as people need to understand, is simply the excess levy, the amount of taxing capacity that the town did not tax in previous years. We can tax up to the Prop 2.5 level. If we don't tax that 2.5 level, because we've managed to make our budget with less, that extra amount of taxing ability doesn't go away. It gets held in reserve, so that at some point, if we needed to get that much more money, we could go get it through taxation without asking for an override. And over time, it builds up. And right now, it's built up to $1,180,000. This is our 3rd override we've done, which is a measure of the fiscal responsibility that our town has practiced. However, the plan before us is to take it all. And I feel as if that is a bit of a risky proposition. Our chief financial officer, when he put out an explanation of what various reductions would mean, he did not even include the option of removing it all. I do think from a fiduciary responsibility, it is wiser for the town to have a little bit on the table than nothing. And so I do not support the fact that it is a complete removal of the levy.
Thank you. Mary Jo?
Oh, this is always a hard one. It's a bit complicated. It's not. People seem to, when they hear the word underwrite, think they're going to get money back. Well, you're not. It's just a case of we're going to be starting at a lower place than we have to work on next year's budgets. We're going to take that, if they take that $101,180,000, they're taking it off of the amount we can raise before 2.5 and new growth, so that we're starting at a lower levy to begin with. And then we're going to add the new growth and the 2.5, and we come out with a lower levy limit, which means, and a levy limit is the amount of money the town is allowed to raise through taxation. So we're going to have a lower amount that we can raise through taxation next year to use for our budget process.
So as I see it, the excess, yes, I do support the underwrite. I was actually the one that put it out there at our selectmen's meeting that we should think about it, having an underwrite. All the underwrite does is it gets rid of that excess levy that we have, and it allows us to be a bit more transparent on our borrowing, on our budget. To kind of boil it down to brass tacks, it's like having a line of credit on your checking account. So if you don't use it, you don't need it. If we're starting at that 2.5% and that's where we have to get to, it's just a whole lot more transparent to the taxpayers. It doesn't mean we can't go over that, it just means we have to have a conversation on how we're going to get to that. So it removes one of the kind of the pockets in the pants.
Shahid?
I think I certainly appreciate the spirit of underwrite. It sends the message that there's more fiscal discipline and more, I think, rigor and the willingness to not or keep a check on the taxes. But in reality, I think we need to get all the information together and see what's happening. We have a $93 million budget. We have $8 million capital borrowing. And if you look at the details of the budget, you'll see that on various fronts, there is need for more budget, more money, because this is a high growth time. And unless we have a very well defined path on our fiscal management with a strategic plan, we don't know what the underwrite is going to impact this year, next year, or the year after, because once you have it, that's the new base. So with that, we're going to lose some revenue going forward too. So I think given that, I'm leaning towards a no, because I think it needs more thought work, more analysis, and more impact understanding. But I certainly appreciate the spirit of it.
Sure.
Very quickly. If we need more funds, we will have more than a conversation. We will have an override. I will probably support the underride when it comes to the vote, because this seems to be the will of the board. We can try it. We can see what happens. We can always go back and reclaim those funds through an override. There are also other ways that it could be funded in an emergency. So we can try it. It makes me a little uncomfortable. I think it's a little too much. I would have preferred an underride of a smaller amount, but I will probably support it and let the voters see how our budget process goes.
Shahid, do you have something?
I think what I would say is that, again, we don't want to 1 year think, okay, let's do an underwrite. It sounds, very encouraging. And then the next year we find out, oh, it's not actually giving us enough money. Let's do an override. It looks bad from a rating perspective if you look at the bond investors. So we need to be cognizant of that. And it makes us look like we are not thoughtful enough. We don't have a 3-year, 5-year plan. And we don't have everything connected to really understand how much we can save and how much we practically, realistically can give back as through underwrite. So I'm all for checking the taxes and giving back money. In this case, Mary Jo is right. It's not exactly tangible money coming back. It's less growth in taxes. So all I'm saying is that underride, override, it's not just something we should do by whim. I'm not saying that's happening, but we need to have more thoughtful projection of it.
Okay. Shell, unless you had something else?
No, I think I'm good.
All right, I think we're ready for some yes or no questions. So these questions are just a simple yes or no answer. And we'll just go left to right for the answers to these questions. Okay, so the first question is, do you support the creation of a single property historic district at 76 Main Street? Yes or no?
Well, isn't that interesting?
Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes or no?
I would say no.
Okay, Claire?
Yes.
Okay, Mary Jo?
This is a tough one. I have two ways. I want to save it, and I want to see us move forward. So I think right now, to give us a few months to look into it, I think that when they look into a historic district, it'd take 18 months. That I would say yes.
Okay, Shahid?
I think it's a difficult question as well. And before I get into that, I think it also shows that we are not strategic enough in our
Yes or
thinking.
no? Yes or no?
So I would wait for the town meeting and hear more from the voice of the town. I'm leaning towards a yes.
Okay. Do you support the citizens' petitions to limit growth? Brandon?
No.
Claire?
No.
Mary Jo?
No.
Shahid?
No, but I
Okay.
think it stirs up the right thought.
No.
That's a no.
All right. Now, this is the most important question. Do you think the Boston Bruins will win the Stanley Cup?
No.
Sometime, but not this year, no.
Mary Jo?
Hopefully, yes.
All right. Shahid?
Tough, but we'll support to the end.
All right.
Follow up on that. I don't really follow hockey too much.
Okay. All right. Thank you all for participating tonight. We got to do the closing statements. That's right. Live television, folks. All right. So we'll do some closing statements. We'll start off with Brendan for a closing statement. You got up to 2 minutes.
I won't need 2 minutes. Thank you very much for having us here. My love for Hopkins runs deep. I want what's best for the town. And if I'm your vote for selectman on May 20th, great. I'll continue to do the best job that I can and try to keep moving the town forward. If you guys think that two of these other three candidates are better than me, I would implore you to vote for them. I simply want what's best for Hopkins. Being a selectman doesn't enhance my resume as a nurse. It doesn't enhance me professionally. It actually takes quite a few hours away from my family. But my love for the town is, as I said the other day, I wear it on my sleeve, and I simply want what's best for Hopkins. I know that I can do a great job. I think we've done a good job for the last 3 years, and I think the next 3 years we can just build on that. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Claire?
Thank you. I certainly hope in the years that I've served that I've earned trust and respect, that I've demonstrated that I try to listen, that I try to be respectful. I try to understand all the many factors that go into some of the issues. They're not always easy solutions, but I do believe in a balanced approach. I believe that we can collaborate, we can work together, we can find creative solutions that meet a variety of needs, that are respectful, that are reasonable, that are practical, that are effective. And I always look for a win-win. I think most problems can offer a win-win if we're willing to listen and willing to collaborate. And I will continue, if elected, to serve you with respect and commitment and love for this town.
Thank you. Mary Jo?
I am retired, so I really want to bring my skills and my experiences financially and municipally and statewide to the board of selectmen, and I think I can help a lot with those things. I've spent 40-something years here in town, and I spent all 40 years volunteering for various things. I'm 35 on the marathon committee alone. And in fact, I love the trust fund candidates that were here tonight because I was the founding member of the Trust Fund Commission here in town. I have been an assessor in 2 other towns. When I worked for the state senate, we represented Hopkinton. I was a district director, so I represented Hopkinton very much with the senate. And in fact, I did all the Boy Scout citations for the senate for like 10 years. And I really think that I am a good communicator. I think that I am a good collaborator. I've been on so many boards that have worked with other boards, worked with state agencies, worked with many towns. And I'd like to bring those skills to the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Like your vote. Oh, I also want to wish you all a happy May Day. When I was a kid, we did this little May basket thing. They don't do that anymore.
Shahidul.
I want to thank HCAM for organizing such a wonderful event. Today's event shows the strength of our democracy, and certainly enjoyed the lively discussion with all the candidates, and proud to be part of this group. And I believe Hopkinton is going through an important transition time. Our yearly budget growing nearly 100 million, tremendous growth, putting pressure on all the services. I believe I can add value with my experience and expertise working in appropriation committee for 4 years and decades of corporate leadership. I am uniquely qualified to add new strategic perspective, budget oversight, and planning to manage this growth. Our great schools helped build this town. I will lead with harmonious collaboration with town, school, and stakeholders to keep eyes on our most precious ball. Our taxes are rising for years, challenging affordability for many great citizens who built this town for decades. We have challenges managing budget, 84% revenue coming from individual residences. I will keep taxes on check by increasing revenues, proactively welcoming suitable businesses, along with laser beam fiscal focus. Finally, I love this town. We are invested here, raising our kids and building our lives. I believe in one Hopkinton. As your next selectman, I will listen to your voice, represent every citizen. I will work with fellow fine selectmen, town administration, school, and other committees to do what's best for this town and best for your quality of lives. So I humbly ask for your vote as your next selectman on May 20. Thank you and have a good night.
Okay, thank you. That will do it for tonight's contested races debate. I would like to thank all the candidates who joined us, as well as our in-studio and at-home viewers, the HCAM staff and crew, Michelle Murdoch, and everyone else who helped put together tonight's debate. We want to remind everyone to get down to town meeting next week. It will take place at Hopkinton Middle School starting at 7 p.m. on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. The polls are open 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. Monday, May 20th. All Hopkinton precincts vote at the Hopkinton Middle School Brown Gymnasium. Don't forget to get out and vote. We hope that this program helped get you ready for this year's town election. For all of us at HCAM, I'm Tom Nappy. Thank you for watching and have a good night.